Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome to this live broadcast from the IMAN Center in Kirkland on this 8th day of Muharram in the year 1442 after Hijri, also Thursday, August 27th, year 2020. We begin our program with the recitation of the Holy Quran, and the verses chosen today are the first 10 verses of Surah Al-Baqarah.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألف لام ميم ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين الذين يؤمنون بالغيب ويقيمون الصلاة ومما رزقناهم ينفقون والذين يؤمنون بما أنزل إليك وما أنزل من قبلك وبالآخرة هم يوقنون أولئك على هدى من ربهم وأولئك هم المفلحون إن الذين كفروا سواء عليهم أأنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون ختم الله على قلوبهم وعلى سمعهم وعلى أبصارهم غشاوة ولهم عذاب عظيم ومن الناس من يقول آمنا بالله وباليوم الآخر وما هم بمؤمنين يخادعون الله والذين آمنوا وما يخدعون إلا أنفسهم وما يشعرون في قلوبهم مرض فزادهم الله مرضا ولهم عذاب أليم بما كانوا يكذبون صدق الله العلي العظيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Surah Al-Baqarah, verses 1 to 10. In the name of God, the Lord of mercy, the giver of mercy. Alif Lam Mim. This is the scripture in which there is no doubt, containing guidance for those who are mindful of God, who believe in the unseen, keep up the prayer, and give out of what we have provided for them. Those who believe in the revelation sent down to you, Muhammad, and in what was sent before you. Those who have firm faith in the hereafter. Such people are following their Lord's guidance, and it is they who will prosper. As for those who disbelieve, it makes no difference whether you warn them or not. They will not believe. God has sealed their hearts and their ears, and their eyes are covered. They will have great torment. Some people say, we believe in God and the last day, when really they do not believe. They seek to deceive God and the believers, but they only deceive themselves, though they do not realize it. There is a disease in their hearts to which God has added more. Agonizing torment awaits them for their persistent lying. Sadaqallahul Aliyyul Azim.
We continue our program here with the recitation of Marthia. Thank you, Brother Kareem and Sister Nafisa. The Marthia today we have a two-part. First is souls, and then the second part is the regular Marthia. And tonight is the night where we remember Hazrat Ali Akbar alayhi salam, the son of Imam Hussein, who was martyred on the day of Ashura. Let us turn our attention to the souls.
By Muhammad Ali Muhammad Salawat.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
بانوں نے یہ بین سنائے واری جان اکبر میرے بانوں نے یہ بین سنائے واری جاؤں اکبر میرے مجھ دکھیا بے کس کے جائے واری جان اکبر میرے مانوں نے میں نے تم کو لاڈ لگائے واری جاؤں اکبر میرے آج سلامی کرنے نہ آئے واری جاؤں اکبر محمد آل محمد صلوات.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
بر محمد آل محمد صلوات. اللہم صلی علی محمد و آل محمد. جبرن میں لٹا باغ شباب علی اکبر اور آیا جمع مرگ خطاب علی اکبر بسمل ہوئے بن بیائے جناب علی اکبر نیزوں میں گھرا اس پہ عقاب علی اکبر مقتل میں گرا بانوں کا خورشید زمین پر ایک ہاتھ کلیجے پا رکھے ایک جبین پر غل پڑ گیا خون میں ہوئے غلطان علی اکبر شہ کہتے چلے ہائے میری جان علی اکبر ہائے ہائے میرے فرزند پرارمان علی اکبر بابا کے بس ہو گئے قربان علی اکبر آغاز جوانی میں یہ کیا کر گئے بیٹا جب بیاہ کے قابل ہوئے تب مر گئے بیٹا، اے میرے جوان تیری مرگ جوانی، یہ مرگ جوانی یہ تیری تشنہ دہانی، سب از پشتر نہر سے سیراب ہوں جانی، ہائے ہائے میرے پیاسے نہ تمہیں کو ملا پانی، کس ناز و نعم سے ہوئے 18 برس کے، پر حیف کہ اب مرتے ہو پانی کو ترس کے، مظلوم تھے تم مثل حسین میرے جانی، ہمت میں علی شکل میں تھے احمد ثانی، اخلاق حسن حمزہ کا تھا زور جوانی، افسوس تھے تم اپنے بزرگوں کی نشانی، تم قتل ہو اور آہ میں دیکھا کروں بیٹا، پر موت پہ قابو نہ ہو تو کیا کروں بیٹا، جبرن میں لٹا، بر محمد آل محمد صلوات،
اللہم صلی علی محمد وآل محمد.
Once again, thank you, Brother Mansoor, Brother Ali, and Hamza for beautiful recitation. We really enjoy listening to you every day. May Allah reward you for all what you do. Before I introduce our speaker tonight, there's a few announcements I would like to get across. First and foremost is the program for this evening. Today being Thursday, the eve of Friday, we will have a slightly extended program. After Salatul Maghribain, we'll have Dua Kumail and Diyat Warith. So we will be going another half an hour or so extra after the program, which normally ends at 9 o'clock. We might be going until 9:30 or 9:40 or so. Which then brings me to the program for tomorrow. Tomorrow is the night of Ashura, and tomorrow is also the time we have selected for an open discussion with our guest speaker, Sayyid Hassan Rizvi. Sayyid Hassan Rizvi has touched interesting topics, one of identity and the idea that a Muslim identity is rooted in Tawheed. I'm sure some of you may have found his lectures very interesting and appropriate. Some of you may find them a little bit more wanting, or you may have a counter viewpoint. I hope that in our community we will have a culture whereby it's not just a monologue but more of a dialogue of the people who come and present to us. So we'd like to invite every one of you to join us tomorrow in a Zoom discussion with our speaker. The details are on the website, where you get an opportunity to engage with him, to ask him any questions you may want, he can elaborate, to offer a counterpoint, or to actually ask him on any other topic besides what he has discussed, if there is a burning issue, after we've exhausted material on what he has discussed so far. I'm sure that everybody has got their own take on his series of lectures. I have found them particularly relevant at this time, given the identity issues we're facing, as well as the need that there is to be able to express our faith in a convicted way in light of atheism and non-belief that surrounds us in our society. So I found his approach interesting, and I'm sure that just like him, we will also go through growth as we progress with time. So the Q&A tomorrow is at 6 o'clock, followed by our regular program, the program for the night of Ashura. Then we have a pretty full schedule on the day of Ashura. We will start at 11 in the morning with the Amal of Ashura. Everything will be online. There might be some confusion. Please do not go to the Iman Center. There's nothing going on at the Iman Center in physical space other than later on in the afternoon. But at 11 o'clock we will do the Amal of Ashura, which involves recitation of the ziyarats, the dua, as well as the prayers or nawafil prayers. So we'll start at 11 o'clock in the morning, and we will continue until about 1 o'clock. At about 1 o'clock we will break for Dhuhrain, and our program for Ashura will then resume half an hour later at 1 after Maghrib Dhuhrain, with 1:30, where we'll have the Marthia, the Nawha, and the lecture from our guest speaker again. After the Maktal Bayan of Ashura and the Latmiya, we have planned a Tabarruk drive-through at the Iman Center. Alhamdulillah, there's been a pretty good response, just like the response we had for Eid. We look forward to seeing you all at the Iman Center, and that will be at 3:30 in the afternoon. The hospitality community is still looking for volunteers to help out, and if you are inclined to help, please be at the Iman Center at 3 p.m. So we can get everything ready by 3:30 when people start arriving. And then our program for the Shami Ghariban will start at the time for namaz, which is 11 minutes past 8, and then so we'll start with prayers first, and then we'll have the program for Shami Ghariban after the sunset, inshallah. So it's a little bit different than the program we've had so far. So that's the program today. Extended program with Dua Kumail. Tomorrow Q&A with our speaker, and a full day's program of Ashura on the day of Ashura starting at 11 in the morning. A physical program at the Iman Center at 3:30, Tabarruk Drive, and then we'll have the Shami Ghariba program. Brothers and sisters, it's also my request to you that we are appealing for your donations, your generous donations. Many of you have already contributed. We are looking for donations to cover the expense for Tabarruk. We do not have any prize associated with Tabarruk Drive, so those who want to sponsor, you can make a cash contribution to Iman, either by check or in cash on the day you arrive for Tabarruk, or you can send us email, and we'll be happy to send you an email pledge form that you can use to make a donation. We also need your funds to help cover the cost of Muharram. There are various costs associated with who's hosting this program. So please be generous and let us make sure that we have covered everything here. With this, now it is my pleasure to introduce our speaker on this 8th day of Muharram for his 8th address to us. Please welcome him with salawat.
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين شفيع المذنبين رحمة للعالمين سيدنا والنبينا وحبيب قلوبنا والشفيع نفوسنا والطبيب ذنوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم ثم الصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين المنتجبين المكرمين الخيرين الفاضلين السيدين الصادقين سيما بقية الله في الأرضين روحي وأرواح العالمين لتراب مقدم الفداء ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الأولين والآخرين إلى قيام يوم الدين أما بعد. Mu'mineen, mu'minat, brothers and sisters in Islam and Iman, Salamun Alaikum wa Rahmatullahi wa Barakatuh. We're continuing our session entitled From Muslim to Mu'min. We've gone through the first topic which causes us doubt, which is the idea of Tawheed. We've proven that there must be some first cause, an uncaused cause, a necessary existent and being that possesses this quality and can give it to everything else in the world and everything else in existence. And we showed that through rational, logical proofs, without having to seek recourse to the Quran or to the Ahlul Bayt, alayhim salam. We went through some of the objections, talking about how polytheism is not a rational concept. We talked about the Big Bang Theory, the issue between religion and science, and whether this universe can be randomly generated or not. And also why there can only be one necessary being, only one uncaused cause which causes and leads to the existence of this universe, this cosmos. When we envision an unlimited God, an unlimited being, there's no room for any other type of perfect God, powerful being. When you think of the most unlimited, the most perfect, the most infinite, then there's only one infinity. If it encapsulates all perfections, then there is no such thing as having two perfections in that sense. Because by definition, by nature, that would make the other one imperfect. And we ended last night by talking about a practical value and the lesson behind this tahleel, or this belief that we have of La ilaha illallah, that there is no God but Allah, and we retranslated it and re-understood it in a deeper level as there is no priority, there is no authority, there is no source for our behavior, for our actions, for what we do, except for Allah. Allah is the ultimate source for all things. So before we engage in religious dialogue, political dialogue, before we give out our many times uneducated, unresearched opinions, it's best that we leave it to those who have researched these ideas and who can actually connect their thoughts and ideas and behavior back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So whenever we get stuck at that crossroads of what to do I go one way or the other way? Think about which way is more godly. Which way is in line with Islamic thought? Which way is the way that pleases Allah and is in line with the behavior and the actions of the Ahlul Bayt? Something that, of course, only an expert would be able to help teach us. Now we move on to our next subject. One thing to keep in mind is, whenever you hear people, especially atheists, anybody who has a doubt about the religion, normally they end up jumping around from place to place. As an example, you'll find atheists who don't believe in God, but the first thing they do is they go and attack the idea that, this God that you believe in is not merciful. You see, all the proofs for God's existence or for the religion, they work sort of like, mathematics or any sort of complex discipline. If you want to understand advanced calculus, you need to know basic algebra first, right? And before you understand basic algebra, you need to know arithmetic, right? You need to know how to add, subtract, multiply, etc., divide. And before you understand arithmetic, you need to know numbers. Somebody who, let's say, doesn't believe in basic arithmetic or numbers won't ever understand advanced calculus, let alone even regular calculus. The same thing applies for religious ideas and beliefs. Sometimes you and I have a doubt about, let's say, why Maghrib is 3 rakats, why Qasr prayer only applies like this, why are dogs najis, etc. Well, first we should make sure we, as much as possible, truly understand who is Allah, who is God, what is God, what is this concept of Tawheed that we believe in. The same thing applies to our next concept. If we want to understand the concept of justice, of God's justice, adl ilahi, as some may say, then we need to make sure we understood Tawheed first. So we have to be careful of jumping around from place to place. So if we've understood Tawheed properly, then we can come on to the next concept, which is justice. Or adl or adala. Is having belief in God enough? We believe in Tawheed. We believe in an all-powerful creator. Is that it? Is that all that we need to become better Muslims, or going from Muslim to Mu'min and start to practice what we believe? For many of us, that might be the case, because our main doubt was about God's existence or his nature, and that's it. That doubt has been extinguished, so now we can practice. For some of us, it's not enough. Just because we believe in someone's power, in someone's authority, in someone's knowledge, doesn't necessarily mean that we trust them. Power, authority, and knowledge don't automatically equate to trust and lead to trust. Let me give an example that I think might help us out understand this. Think about the police. The police right now, right? We recognize that they do have power, that they do have authority, right? They, generally speaking. They're the ones that have the authority to, issue a ticket or issue a citation if you break the law. And this authority comes from the government, right? Whether it's local, state, or federal. Now, among all the laws that police officers will enforce, there are some that you and I obey, and there's some that we don't really obey, we don't really care about. Let me give the examples. So, when we're driving on the street, at nighttime, when you're driving, we turn our lights on, right? When it's raining outside, we turn our windshield wipers on. At a red light, we normally stop. For the driver and the front seat passenger, normally we put on our seatbelts. These are all laws that pretty much every single driver, if not every single driver, the overwhelming majority of drivers, they'll obey the laws, right? They'll put their lights on at night. They'll put on their windshield wipers when it's raining. They'll stop at a red light, and they'll put on their seatbelts. Even if those four things were not actual laws, right? You have to put on your lights at night. You have to put on your windshield wipers when it's raining. You have to stop at a red light, and you have to put on your front seatbelt, at least for most states, right? Or I think all states, right? They're the front driver and passenger. So even if those weren't laws, we would still obey them. We'd still practice them. Now, what about other laws we don't obey? Think about speed limit. Most of us will at least go a few miles over the speed limit. Some of us maybe 10, 15 miles an hour over the speed limit, right? We don't obey that, really. Or when we're changing lanes, how often do you and I not even bother to put on our blinkers, our indicators, right? We just shift from one lane to the other. Or when it comes to cell phone usage, many states now have banned the use of cell phones while driving, right? You have to do hands-free. And some states may even have an issue with that. Now, why is it that we know that the police can, give you a ticket, they can pull you over if you go over the speed limit, if you don't use your blinkers or your indicators when changing lanes, or if you use your cell phone? What's the difference between this group of laws and the previous ones? The previous ones were all laws, and this group are also laws. We practice the beginning. Why? Why do we practice those first four ones? Driving at night with lights on, turning on your windshield wipers, stopping at a red light or a stop sign, or putting on your seatbelt, versus speed limit laws or using your indicators or blinkers or when changing lanes, or using your cell phone while driving. Why? The difference here is these final three ones that we don't obey normally are because we don't trust in the law. We don't think that the laws are actually beneficial for us. In fact, we think that it goes against our sense of freedom, that it's unjust actually. Because we believe they're unjust or non-beneficial, unbeneficial, or useless, we have no problem in breaking them. We don't care whether there's a power or authority that has put the laws in place. We don't care whether some city council has passed a local ordinance. We're going to break the law. It doesn't matter. It's not a big deal. Nobody will get hurt. We don't think the laws are rational, reasonable, useful. We think they're useless, irrational. They're meant for certain other people, but they're not meant for you and I. That's how we reconcile and rationalize the idea of breaking those specific laws. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So what we see is the differentiating factor is about trust. It's about justice. It's about benefit. The same thing applies with Islamic law. Many of us, we don't trust the actual law. If somebody thinks, I don't think hijab is useful nowadays, well, you're probably not going to observe hijab. Right? Whether you're a man or a woman. If you don't think that prayer gets you closer to Allah, then you're not going to pray. You're like, I don't care. I don't think it's a big deal. If you don't think that eating haram meat is really detrimental, then who cares? Right? You'll go ahead, you'll go to McDonald's, you eat a burger there. Like, it's not a big deal. God doesn't really care. You don't trust the actual law. You know that there's an authority. You know that God has power, but you don't really trust the laws that he's put down. You put your own rationalization there. In the same way we would disobey certain traffic laws, we would disobey and not bother and not pay attention to certain divine laws, certain aspects of the Sharia. We rationalize using our own method of thinking, our own philosophies, our own ideologies, and we decide what is good, what is bad, what is just, what is unjust. This is what has caused most of us to not practice what we preach, not practice what we believe. Why? Because we don't actually believe that the laws are useful. We don't believe they're beneficial. In fact, we might believe that the laws are unjust. And some may take it deep down and think, well, it's because I'm not sure. Maybe God just made up these rules for no reason. And if God can make up these rules for no reason, then it's not a big deal if I practice them or not. So all of this is a question about how much do we trust Allah? Does he really do justice to us or not? So this is the question that we want to try to answer, inshallah, tonight. Salawat ala Muhammad wa Muhammad. We can see this concept in many different narrations. We mentioned one a few nights ago where the Holy Prophet had mentioned that somebody who wants to gain strong iman, real iman, they should believe what is in Allah's hand more than in their own hand. Right? They would trust what is with Allah more than in their own hand. Right? They trust God more than themselves. We see a similar style of narration with the first Imam alayhi salam, where Imam Ali alayhi salam says, Al-Iman ala arba'ati arkan. Iman is founded, grounded, and rests upon 4 distinct pillars. The first is tawakkul ala Allah, having trust in God. The second is tafweed ilallah, is forfeiting, giving up things to God. The third, or delegating things to God. The third is wa taslim li amrillah, is completely submitting to the commands and the orders of God. And the fourth and the final stage is warida bi qada'illah, and being pleased and happy with whatever God decides. These 4 elements, trusting God, delegating all your affairs to him, submitting completely to all the things that he has ordered us to do, and then being happy with whatever is the outcome. This is very difficult for you and I, especially given this modern society that we live in. Very, very tough for us. There's so many examples, but I don't want to go too much in detail. What we want to focus on is the overarching concept of justice itself. Can God be unjust? Do we actually see justice within Islam, the Islamic rules, for example, or in God himself as an essential trait? Is God just, or can God do some sort of injustice to us? If we can answer that in the positive, that God can only be just, then that would perhaps help us grow our level of iman, so that maybe we can practice a bit more of our faith and act upon what we believe. Salawat ala Muhammad wa Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa Muhammad. So now our second question here. What is justice? Everybody uses the term nowadays, right? Social justice, obviously, it's on everybody's minds. But what is it? I guarantee you, if you ask most people, they will not be able to give you a clear definition. It's an abstract concept that we all think we all understand, but when you're actually questioned about it, when you actually think about it, most of us have no clue. We can't define it properly. And you'll see many individuals debating and arguing and not being able to be united upon one definition. And if you can't agree upon a definition, then how can you actually engage in a discussion? It's not going to work out. Whenever you get into any sort of disagreement or discord or argument or want to enter into a friendly discussion with somebody, the first and most important thing is to make sure you agree upon a working definition. And I've seen 99% of the time, without exaggeration, this is where most people fail. They assume that the definition that's in their mind is the same one in the other person's mind, and it's usually not the case. It's good to say, look, you're saying that this whatever issue is a case of injustice. I'm saying it's a case of justice. Well, we need to make sure we have the same definition of justice and injustice. Let's talk about that first. But again, most people, because of the egotism, the egotistical nature of the human being, because we're not willing to engage in these discussions, because most of us don't even know how to. We're not trained. This is why we shouldn't bother even arguing with people about this stuff. It's not meant for us. We don't have the ability, the skill set to communicate with people properly. So why even bother? Just say, look, I have an opinion. It might be uneducated. I'm willing to learn more, but it's not worth it for you and I as lay people to argue about these things. Whether it's in the political sphere, whether it's in the religious sphere, scientific, whatever it is. What's the point? We don't have enough information. Yeah, if you are in that field of study, if you have some sort of expertise, then fine, you can engage in civil dialogue or discussion. But otherwise, what's the point? Why would you bother, right? Justice is something discussed within religion, obviously. In religious discussions, it's one thing. And then in philosophy, in Western philosophy, it's something else. And then within political theory, it's another discussion. And all of these intersect to some degree. But you would have to have some idea that there are different ideas and definitions of justice. Remember when we went back to our discussion of identity? And many people were sort of disagreeing with the proposed idea that we had. That's probably because we don't agree on a definition of identity. And even if we did, the main point was this. Even if we agree on identity, the reason that we'd say that there's a clash of identities is because there is a certain amount of value or certain value sets given within being American, and then a certain other value set that exists within being Muslim. Sometimes they intersect, but sometimes they clash and collide. And that was our main issue, is what to do when they clash and collide. And of course, we said Islam always will take precedence. That's the idea. And a person should always make sure they're in line with Islamic values. Over here too, who gets to define what is justice? Before we go and jump to the Islamic definition, I want to explore the other ones that may exist in our minds, but we may not realize is not actually forget the fact that it's not an Islamic definition, but it's just objectively, philosophically not a strong definition. So I'd like to go through a few of those and then refute those or object to those ideas, inshallah, before we jump onto the Islamic definition or understanding of justice. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ajil faraj. Okay. Now, of course, this is a huge discussion within political theory, so we're not going to go through everything, but just a few of the major ones that would probably be in our minds right now. You see, the normal way that you and I think about justice is on two spheres. One is when it comes to our personal relationships and our personal life, meaning we get hurt in some way, especially for children. So let's say you're at the table, it's pizza night. So you have pizza there, and now there's only 2 slices left. And now there's 2 kids who are arguing about who gets the last slice of pizza, right? They both want it, and they might argue about it. They say, "Oh, you had the last slice last time." It's like, "No, well, I'm hungrier than you are," right? They might go back and forth and argue. And normally then this is where the parents would step up and give it to one sibling or one child over the other one. And they'll give their reason, right? They might say, "Oh, he's older than you," or "Oh, she's younger than you," or, you both have to have the same amount of slices. They'll give some sort of criterion about why they're going to give that one slice to somebody else. Or maybe they'll say, "You know what, let's cut it in half and both of you get half of a slice." Whatever the parent decides. And then one of those kids, or maybe both of them, say, "Come on, that's not fair. That's just not fair. Right? You're being unfair to us. That's not right." In other words, they're saying that's unjust. Right? That's what they say. And a lot of times that's how you and I, engage in that. Maybe there's an issue at our center. Whatever it happens to be. We may complain to the board. Right? and say, oh, what was done was unjust. This is not fair. And I've heard it for, again, I'm sorry to say, the most ridiculous, childish sorts of things. I've heard people complaining that they were at the center, chai was being served, and when they came, right, they were, let's say, after the program, they were a little bit late in getting to the chai, and the chai was all finished, and there was nothing left. And they say, oh, this is unfair, this is unjust. I've been coming, and I do this, I do that. It's not fair. I should be able to have some chai. Now, uncle, auntie, the chai is finished. What do you want us to do? Like, are you so childish and so immature you're complaining about food at the center? Are you not so well off that you can go home and make your own cup of chai? You have to rely on the generosity of the center? Like, is the chai at the center really so good that you have to complain about it? Really? Some of us are so no matter how old we are. And I've heard, people in their 60s, 70s, 80s act like this. Meaning, in their bodies, they might be 60, 70, 80. They might look like adults, that's seniors. But really, in their minds, in their souls, they're just like 5-year-olds. Unfortunately. We should really ask ourselves, are we really acting like we should? Are we really mature? Are we really acting egotistically or not? Think about this, inshallah. So this is one sphere when it comes to personal desires. That's not really our concern right now. Although it's related, but it's not our major concern. The way that you and I think about, when we think about justice right now, it normally comes within this idea of social justice or criminal justice, right? Think about what's on everybody's minds right now, right? Black Lives Matter. Police shootings, right? Shooting unarmed, innocent black civilians. It's happening constantly, or at least we see it in the news constantly, right? Without me saying that it's happening constantly, because there may be some differences out there of somebody's analysis and understanding. So right now, people are thinking of justice for X individual, Y individual, right? Within the framework of seeking justice for the black community, the African American community in this country, or minorities in general. On the other side, some might argue, look, it's the police who deserve justice, quote unquote, right? More of, let's say, the Blue Lives Matter or All Lives Matter type of movement. And they say, look, because of XYZ things, the police need to be given more of this, or, they should be treated XYZ. Everybody's framing it in terms of justice, and depending on, who they support, will throw justice either this way or that way. Or we can talk about it in terms of international politics, right? Justice for the people of Kashmir. Justice for the people in Yemen. The people in Palestine. The people in Syria. We can think of many different examples. Right? For those of you who are politically active, I'm sure you can think of a lot. This is usually the way that you and I think about it. But both of the concepts are related. Whether it's talking about, the grander, broader scheme things of international politics, whether it's local politics within our own country, whether it's within your own city, or whether it's talking about in your own home between you and your family, you and your spouse, or you and your kids. Justice plays a very, very important role. And the definition that you and I have is going to affect how we express justice or injustice and how we seek that. So let's start going through the different definitions, inshallah. Salawat ala Muhammad wa Allahumma salli ala. The first definition that some people have in their minds is that, justice is following the law. It's obeying the law. That's it. So this is framed in terms of criminal justice, right? If you steal, that's unjust, right? Because you've broken the law. Right? Simple definition. So it sounds good, right? Here's the problem. What if the actual laws are unjust themselves? Right now, somebody wants to frame justice in terms of follow and obey the rules, obey the law. And you see that on one side of the political spectrum, people will say, oh, the reason that, for example, so many innocent blacks are being killed and shot is because they don't comply, they don't follow the rules that these police officers are telling them to comply with. They say, sorry, then something's going to happen. Either you'll be detained or arrested or tased or shot, unfortunately, right? And they say that's the natural conclusion. You're not following the rules. Well, okay, but what if the rules themselves are unjust? And of course, we can counter that example by saying that anybody who's complied by the rules, they've also been harassed and detained and arrested and shot. But again, we're not worried about the specific example of what's going on with police and minorities right now. We're concerned with the philosophy about what is justice. So, using that example, using a different example, what if the laws themselves are unjust? Think about, again, slavery, since we're on the topic of minorities and African Americans. What if the law actually says that one group of people are not equal to another group of people? That, for example, in this country, as was many years ago, whites are not equal to blacks. You can take slaves. Everybody now seems to recognize that these are unjust, right? We believe in this idea of equality, and at least outwardly, we don't believe in racism. So, if the law is unjust itself, then how could obeying the law be just? So this definition doesn't really seem to hold. Okay, now let's look at another definition. Another definition that some people have in their mind, that some political thinkers and philosophers bring, is that justice is about whatever makes the majority of people happy. Take the majority in a society, whatever they agree to, whatever makes them happy, then that's the group that's going to be your definition of justice. So, okay, well, what if the majority of people decide on something that is unjust? Same problem, right? Why are we automatically assuming that the majority of people in a country are going to do what is always right? Again, let's go back to Nazi Germany. The Third Reich was put in through a democratic government, right? We shouldn't automatically, connect the idea of and the political philosophy of democracy with justice. Some like to equate the two, and this is one of the kind of modern ideas within the West, that, democracy is justice, justice is democracy. That's not the case. Many cases throughout history, you can see where, given in Nazi Germany, I think is one of the greater examples, people have voted in an unjust system or unjust leaders. And they voted for injustice to take place when we look at it from the outside. They may not see it like that. Right? The Germans then, they didn't see it as unjust. They thought of it as good, as right. But the rest of the world, and of course now we say that no, this was not justice at all. This was unjust. It's an oppressive government that was there. We have to be careful, again, of grabbing onto these sort of Western American values and automatically equating that with justice. When did the majority automatically have a say over what is right and wrong? Well, that's not how it works. So this definition also goes down the drain. All right, so we have to be very, very careful with that idea. Another definition, I think this will be the final one that we go through today, is somebody say justice is doing whatever is morally right and wrong. Now this one sounds great, right? Because we're not stuck within the idea of the majority. It's doing whatever is right and wrong, whatever is morally good. Whatever is morally good, that's justice. If you go against what is morally right, meaning if you commit an immoral act, that becomes an injustice. Okay, that sounds really great. Here's the problem. Who gets to decide that? If you say it's the majority that decides, well, you're stuck at the problem we just mentioned. The majority can get it wrong. It's not necessary that they'll get it right. Say, okay, fine. Let the government decide. Well, that's the first definition we said had a problem. The government by itself can pick unjust laws. The government is not guaranteed to make a law that'll be just. So the question is, who gets to decide? Even if you and I debate about some issues, how do we know they're actually just? Think about modern contemporary issues. Abortion, for example. Who gets to decide whether it is just to take the life of a human being that's within the womb of a woman, right? The mother. You see many who are pro-life say it's unjust to take and kill and murder that baby within the mother's womb. Whereas on the other side, the ones who are pro-choice will say no. The injustice lies in taking away the liberty and freedom of choice of the individual, of the woman. She can do whatever she wants. Where does justice lie there? You see, and we can take this to any other example, right? Think about reparations. Many will argue for the fact that, given what had happened and has happened to the African Americans, the descendants of slaves, they deserve reparations based on this idea of systemic racism not being able to have access to the same qualities and functions and economic benefits that, let's say, others have had. So based on that, they should be that handicap that was there should be made up for, and they should be given reparations. Some may argue for that. Well, it sounds nice on paper, but how would that actually be just? If, let's say, there is an African American here, and they are connected to, let's say, a slave ancestor, how do you quantify and give a number to how much money they should get? It seems like it's a really crazy thing. Forget the logistics of it. What about somebody else that, let's say, they were also a victim of quote-unquote systemic oppression, right? Some other minorities like Italian Americans early on, Irish Americans, Chinese Americans, right? Jewish Americans. Almost every single minority that's been in this country has been oppressed in some way or another. Why don't we think about reparations for them? Why is it just African Americans, right? This is a response some give. And there are many African American thinkers who say, we don't want these handouts because it's not going to solve the problem. If you just give somebody a handout when they don't know how to budget properly, they don't have the financial wherewithal to know how to spend it, then it's actually unjust, right? Many of us think about this when we're considering giving out our charity, right? If you know somebody is going to buy drugs with it, you know for a fact, they say, look, somebody who's homeless, they say, if you give me money, I'm going to go buy alcohol or drugs. Are you doing them, is that just to give them money so they can do that and, harm themselves further? Some may say it's not your right to judge and to decide what they should do with their money. Others may say, no, if I know they're going to harm themselves, I would be responsible for them harming them because I'd be giving them the money to do so, right? I'd be enabling them, and I don't want to do that. So it's not so easy just to say whatever's right and wrong. The question is, what is the criteria for right and wrong? What is the criteria for justice? And that's where we now come to throw away these other definitions and come to the one which is mentioned in Islam and has been expounded upon by the Ahlul Bayt, very specifically Amirul Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wassalam. Imam Ali alayhi salam has been narrated to have said, Al-adl yadu'u al-umur mawadi'aha. What is adl? What is justice according to Islam? Adl, justice, is putting things, setting affairs right, and you're putting them in their rightful place. Putting things where they belong. Now this is a universal principle that somebody can use when they're performing justice. Now somebody may ask, that just sounds like equality, right? You want to give these equality of outcomes, as they'll put it, right? You want everybody to have the same things. But is that actually justice or not? Is equality of outcome and outcomes actually justice? As many argue right now for men and women. We should have, let's say, equal men and women on the board. We should have equal men and women on this campaign. We need to have the same amount of men and women, or youth and adults, or whatever. Again, this idea of equality, that's what determines what is just and not. Is that really the same? Is equality of outcome actually just or not? Think about if we use the analogy of a classroom. In a classroom, you have two different students. One student, he stays up all night. He was one that paid attention in class, took notes, right? Went after school to seek help from their teacher. They did extra credit work, etc. Put together note cards, everything. You've got another student who didn't really care. In class, they were on their phone. They weren't paying attention. Any sort of extra activities that were offered, they didn't bother. Now, both of these two students show up, they give their final exam. Once they give their exam, then the teacher takes them and, grades it and passes it back. Now, the one who studied all night, they put the right answers, so they deserve, for example, an A or 100. The one who didn't bother all year, let's say they get an F, right? They fail. Now, what if the person who got the F complained and said, that's not fair. You gave them 100, I should get 100 too. Now, the teacher might say, yeah, you're right. Justice is giving everybody the same exact things. Equality of outcomes. So I'm going to give everybody a 100, no matter if they studied or not. The person who studied all night would say, that's not fair. I put in the work, I put in the effort. How could you just give everybody 100? That diminishes my value. I put in the effort. I deserve that. They don't. So then the teacher could say, okay, fine, forget it. I'll flip it around. Everybody gets Fs. Again, that doesn't work too, right? Giving every single person everything equally does not mean justice. equality does not mean justice, especially when it's equality of outcomes. And that's why they say there's a difference between equality of outcomes and equality of opportunities. This is a major discussion that's held right now, although it's not the main crux of our discussion here, but it's something that it's worth exploring. To give people the same opportunities, maybe we could say that that's there. But who do we know who deserves what opportunity? Even there, let's say, I'll give another example, right? One of my friends, his dream was to always be a fighter pilot. Always, he wanted to go to the Air Force and, fly a fighter jet. Now, he found out later in life that, there was conditions. And not everybody can become a fighter pilot. Why? You have to be a very specific height to be able to fit inside the cockpit. And you have to have perfect 20/20 vision. Right? This is something that's necessary. You have to have a certain level of bodily health in order to be able to be a pilot. Now, if that, let's say he applies for becoming a pilot, and right away, of course, they'll say, look, you're not the right height, you are not healthy, and your eyesight's not good enough, so we're not going to allow you to even take the training. Would he be able to say, that's not fair, you should give me the same opportunity as everybody else? Again, that wouldn't be unjust. What would be just is to say those who have the potential of becoming fighter pilots, we can allow them to take the training, allow them to take the course, and then we can judge based on merit. But if you can't even fit in the cockpit, if you don't even have proper eyesight, why would we give you the opportunity? So even judging who deserves what opportunities, that needs to be done by somebody who understands the qualities that are necessary for that position. And sometimes people ask this about Islam. Why does God say women can do this and women can't do that? Men can do this and men can't do that. Well, don't we have biological differences? Don't we have certain spiritual differences? It's clear that we do. So obviously Allah knows which opportunities to give which. Men get certain opportunities that women don't, and women get certain opportunities that men don't. And based on our own specific kinds of journeys towards Allah, we're given different types of rules. We're given different types of ways of connecting to God. My way of connecting to God as a man is not through observing physical hijab, right? I mean, covering up everything except for the hands and the face. That's not my version. That's for females. But in the same way, only a female gets to help in the process of bringing life to the world. I don't get that as a man. I'm completely missing out on that idea. So there are, in a sense, positives and negatives for males, as they are for females. It's not right for us to compare and contrast and say, oh, women get that, I want that too. Men and women should have everything. Whether it's leading prayers or, again, certain physical ideas. We have to look at the fact that God understands the nature of men and women and has given us the potentials and the opportunities individually so that we can grow and get towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and become the perfect version of ourselves. God doesn't, have these overarching categories and, just puts everybody in one box. No. He knows our specific circumstances. He knows our intellectual capabilities, our spiritual capabilities, and he gives us the factors and the qualities and criteria that we need, and he judges based on that. He doesn't judge any two individuals the same way. So we should be careful that we don't mix and match and edit the religion to suit our own limited, misinformed, ignorant sort of needs and understandings about reality. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. So now that we have this definition in mind, right, of putting things in its rightful place, we can ask the question first about God. Is it possible for God to put something where it doesn't belong? Can God be unjust like that? As some might say, right? There are unfortunately some Muslims who have this idea that can God put the Prophet and the Imams in hellfire, for example, and can he put Shaitan in heaven? Can he put good people in hell and bad people in heaven? Some may say, look, God is all powerful, he can do whatever he wants. So yeah, the answer is yes. Now, immediately that should feel it's irrational to us, but we need to open up the argument a little bit so that it does make sense. Okay? So I want to go through, what we're going to do is go through 4 specific points, 4 reasons why somebody would be unjust, and then we'll see if it applies to Allah. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So the first reason why somebody would be unjust and would put something where it doesn't belong is out of ignorance. They don't know what they're doing. All right? For example, let's say I asked you to, whatever, I'm at your house, we're putting away groceries, right? And you say, hey, can you put these, put the flour away. So I take it and I put it on, I don't know, the third cabinet up on the top. You might say, oh, you put it in the wrong place. So in that sense, I put it in the wrong place. Why? Because I didn't know where the right one was. So that's my fault because I did it out of ignorance. I didn't know any better. I had no idea what I was doing. Right? So we'd say, okay, is that applicable to God? Does God know what he's doing? Of course. He's Al-Alim. He knows exactly what he's doing. That's what he did when he created. So the idea of ignorance, justice based on ignorance, doesn't apply. Okay, that's one down the drain. Next. The second reason somebody might perform injustice is because they have a need. They need something. Right? Again, we're trying to say, putting something in its rightful place. That's justice. So let's go back with the same thing. Let's say I'm helping you put your groceries away. And you know what? Let's just say I'm not doing well economically. Right? I'm going through some issues, some financial troubles, and then I see you have all these extra groceries. I say, you know what? I need some of these, and I know that this person, you don't need it. So maybe I take, let's say, one of like a piece of fruit, and then I put it in my pocket, and I leave your house. So I've taken an apple which belonged in your house, but I took it and put it where it didn't belong, right? So I've done an injustice. Why? Because I had a need, and I needed to fulfill that need. Now the question is, does God have some sort of need from us that he would do injustice to us? That he would take something from us? No, again, that's an irrational idea. If he's the one that provides everything, then what need would he have from this world? From anybody or anything else? He has no need for that. So this idea goes down the drain as well. Now, let's go to the third one. The third is when somebody has an inability, a lack of power to do something. So sometimes, let's say, again, same idea. Let's say putting away groceries. And as I'm helping you, let's say I get a phone call. I pick up the phone and whatever, it's some random person. And they say, look, I want you to steal some of the groceries there and then bring it to me outside. Don't say anything. If you do, then I'm going to hurt you, right? I've got a weapon outside. So I'm being forced to do it now. So now because I don't want to do it, but I don't have the ability to protect myself. So I have to do it. I'm forced to do it. There's some outside power forcing me to do it. I have an inability to not commit injustice, meaning I'm forced to commit the injustice. So let's see, does that apply to God? Of course not. Again, this is a ridiculous notion. Nobody can force God to do something, nor does he have any sort of inability, right? He has this qudra and this power over all things. The final and fourth one is about selfishness. Is because I'm being selfish because I have some grudge, right? Again, let's go to the example here. I'm at your house, I'm helping you with groceries, and you know what? I know very well that the groceries don't belong to me, so it's not about ignorance. I don't need extra groceries, so I don't need to steal from you in that sense. Nobody's forcing me, but let's just say, you know what? Last time you made fun of me, or last time you're talking behind my back and I found out, so I want to make you pay. Yeah, I'll take a few of your things and I'll pocket it and I'll leave. I had no need to do that, but it was out of some sort of need of emotionality, right? Some emotional blackmail or a grudge, seeking revenge, right? That emotional need. Now, again, can we apply this to God? How? Nobody can affect him. It's not like you and I sinning is going to actually cause any sort of damage to God. We can't get him angry in that sense or make him upset. Everything that he needs, he has himself. There's no reason to take from us in that sense. But here's the problem, though. Some may say, well, then why are bad things happening? It almost seems like God is punishing us in that sense, right? If I'm a good person, why would God do this to me? I've been praying all day. I give charity. I follow the rules, but my friends or family members, they got corona. It seems like it's unjust. It seems like God is just punishing us unnecessarily. Why is that happening? So yes, out of these four reasons, we don't see it applied to God. But still, the question remains, even though we see in the Quran that Allah says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in chapter 4, verse 40, Allah says, Inna Allah la yadhlimu mithqala dharra. Allah doesn't do even a tiny bit, a grain or an atom's worth of injustice. That's what Allah says. Okay, fine, but the problem is this. On the other side, Allah, you're saying, وَإِن تَكُوا حَسَنَةً يُضَاعِفُهَا. That if somebody does good, Allah multiplies the reward. وَيُؤْتِي مِن لَدُنْهُ أَجْرٌ عَظِيمًا. And He gives a great reward from Himself. Well, God, we don't understand that. Because in this world, we are seeing punishments, trials, tribulations, torture for good people. Shias, we are being oppressed throughout the world. Why is that happening? And for bad people, right, all these oppressors and tyrants and individuals who are clearly oppressive, why do they get all the blessings in the world? This doesn't make any sense to us. So we need to now examine tomorrow night, why do good things happen to bad people and why do bad things happen to good people? Why do all these things take place? And how do we understand that within the framework of God putting things where they belong in the system of justice that we've defined tonight? So this will be our topic tomorrow night, inshallah. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Allahumma salli. One of the greatest examples, if not the greatest example of justice, is the personality whom we are honoring tonight, the son of Imam Hussein, Ali al-Akbar. You see, Imam's mission was about putting things where they belong, putting them back where they belong. What Yazid had done, based on what his father Muawiyah had done, based on what the previous false leaders had done, is they had taken that pure message of Islam that was brought by the Prophet, and also continued by Imam Ali, and they had taken the Muslims away from that. Now, what did Imam say in his own words? That he's trying to fix and restore the ummah back to the way that it was. It had gotten to such a place where people were drinking again. You had the leader of the Muslims drinking openly, committing these disgusting acts that were not befitting for a Muslim. A regular Muslim, getting to a leader, for example. Imam Hussein is trying to restore this idea of Islam back into the people, right? Give them their identity. And perhaps one of the ways that he was able to do so, or he tried to do so, was to say, look, not only do I want to remind you through the teachings of the Prophet, but I want to show you somebody that looks like the Prophet, somebody that sounds like the Prophet, and somebody that has the characteristics of Rasulullah, which happened to be his son Ali al-Akbar. That's why they called him Shabihur Rasulillah. He was the, like the splitting image of the Holy Prophet. And that's why they say that when people would come to Medina, they would say, people who had never met the Prophet, they say, what did he look like? How do we know? And people would send him to the house of Imam Hussein. They said, look at his son, Ali al-Akbar. Look, see how he speaks. See how he interacts. See how he recites the adhan. He's just like the Holy Prophet. He's just like his great-grandfather. And now, when we come to the adhan on the day of Ashura, it's no surprise why Imam Hussein orders his son to do so. Because he wants the Muslims on the other side to recognize, look, hear the adhan, the same adhan that the Prophet had brought down to you. The same, maybe that same voice, if you hear it again, maybe you'll snap out of it. Maybe you'll come to your senses. Maybe you'll leave this army of Ahmad ibn Sa'd. You'll leave the ways of Yazid, the ignorant, oppressive ways, and you'll come back down to reality and come back to your real identity of Islam. And this is perhaps maybe why when somebody asked the fourth Imam after the tragedy of Karbala, they say, Yabna Rasulullah, out of all of the tragic martyrdoms and the deaths of the people in Karbala, out of all the masa'ib and difficulties there, which one was the worst for Hussein? And according to this narration, the fourth Imam replies, as he begins to cry, he says, the toughest thing for Hussein, for my father, was when he had to go to the body of my brother Ali al-Akbar. He said, when my father went to the body of my brother, he was torn apart completely. The way that my father cried for his son Ali al-Akbar, the way that he cried for my brother, he didn't cry like that for anybody else. And some say that he cried so loudly that when the enemy saw this, they began to cry and feel bad and shamed as well. He was so special to our Imam. Now, fast forward to our battlefield of Karbala. We know that all of the other companions, according to the history books, they would come and ask Imam for permission to go out and fight. But you see, Ali al-Akbar, as being the eldest son, the representative of Imam Hussein, the representative of Imam Ali, the representative of Rasulullah, they say, according to some, Imam Hussein himself went to his son, Ali al-Akbar, and he says, "Taqaddum ya bunayya." You go out and fight. I am sending you as my representative. But before you go, say al-wada, say your final salams to all the women, all your cousins. Give your final salam to Zainab. The people who were around witnessing Karbala, some of the historians, those who were noting what was going on, they've narrated that when we saw Akbar leave the tents when he was trying to go out to battle, they say it looked like a janazah was taking place. Mu'mineen, mu'minat, understand the picture here. You know how sometimes when you see the body, right, wrapped up in its kafan, leaving a center, right, when they try to bury a body, you know, sometimes certain individuals, especially the women, they pull the body back because they don't want it to be buried. They can't let go of that body. This is perhaps what they meant when they said, when Ali al-Akbar said his khudafis, his salam, he tried to leave the tent. They said he kept being pulled back in over and over and over again by the women, by Sakina. He would say his salams and said, I need to go now, I need to leave and start. He would leave the tent and he'd be pulled back again over and over again. They'd say, Ya Ali, let us do ziyarah of Rasulullah one more time. They would be kissing his hands over and over again. They would fall down at his feet. They would hold on to his cloak, his abba, and they wouldn't let him go. Finally, Hussein came and he said, look, my son has to leave now. He has a job to do. He has to defend Islam. And when he went out, we see Imam Hussein reciting this beautiful, beautiful poetry, letting people know. He's making dua. He's saying, Allah, look, I'm sending somebody out here. His akhlaq, my son's akhlaq, is just like the Prophet. His features are like the Prophet. His speech is like the Prophet. Whenever I wanted to do the ziyarah of your Nabi Allah, I would look at my son Ali al-Akbar. When Ali al-Akbar goes out and he fights, they say that he was so successful that he was able to come back. When he came back, he's elder. He's a very, very, he's a young adult, but he's still like a young child to some sense. So when he comes back with a sense of pride, he comes and says, he's asking his father. He says, Ya abata, Baba, did you see the way that I was fighting on the battlefield? And a proud Hussein says, yes, bunayya, my dear son, of course I saw you. I'm so proud of you. You did such a great job. But then Akbar says some words which breaks the heart of Hussein. He says, Baba, ya abata, al-atash qad qatalani. This thirst has killed me. And this sword that I'm holding is becoming very, very heavy. If only there was a little bit of water, then I could go out and I could defend us even more. And Hussein, his heart is broken now. He wishes that he could give something to Al-Akbar, but there's nothing that he was able to give. He bids a final farewell to Akbar. Akbar goes out for the last time. As he goes out, Akbar hears footsteps behind him. He turns and he sees his father following him. And he says, Baba, ya abata, why are you following me? You've given me permission, let me go now. He says, Ya bunayya, my son, you haven't understood the position of a father. You don't know what it's like for a father to see his son go for the last time. This is heartbreaking for me. Please, as you are leaving, every few steps, turn around and look at me so I can see your face a few more times. Akbar goes out. He begins fighting once again. Someone comes and takes a spear and throws it into the chest of Akbar. Akbar falls out and calls out to his father, Ya abata, abata, adirikni, adirikni. And Hussein is running, but they say that when he heard the call of his son, his heart was broken so much that he began tripping as he was running towards his son. So he took some time in getting towards the body of Akbar. Akbar was thinking, maybe my father is coming to me slowly because he's looking for water. Akbar then, according to some, he calls out and says, Baba, abata, my grandfather Rasulullah is here. He's giving me water. Please just hurry. I'm not thirsty anymore. Just come to me. I need to see you before I go. So Hussein finally comes to the body of Akbar. He sees that spear there and he asks his final request, please take this spear out of my chest. Now, I don't know what was going through the thoughts and the heart of Hussein. Now, this is the final request. He tries to pick up the spear out of the chest of Akbar, but every time he lifts, the body of Akbar would become lifted as well. It was lodged so tightly within the body of Akbar. So perhaps now, like any father, like any person would do, when a son, the same way Akbar calls to his father for help, and this time, maybe Hussein turns his face towards Najaf now and says, Baba, Ya Ali Madadi, help me, I need your help now too. And he pulls out the spear with all of his strength. When he pulls out the spear, the soul of Akbar comes out as well. على لعنة الله على قوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون رضا بقضائه وتسليما لأمره. Ya Allah, by the right of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad, by the right of Ali al-Akbar, we ask you to forgive all mu'mineen, mu'minat, muslimin, muslimat, accept all of our aza, the poetry recitations, the tears that we shed, the matam that we perform, the lecture that was recited, the masaib that was recited, everything that we've been doing, the food that is being shared, everything we do, Allah, please accept it. Make our hearts towards and turn it towards you. Make our actions and our intentions sincere. Allah, make us yearn for a strong identity, the type of identity that we see Ali al-Akbar had. Help us become splitting images in our akhlaq, in our actions, in our behaviors, like the Holy Prophet, like the Ahlul Bayt, like all of our great scholars and ulama. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. ماتم حسین.
کڑی الجواں کی لاش پر کہتا رہا رو کر پدر آواز تو دے اکبر ہائے آواز تو دے اکبر گرتا ہوا اٹھتا ہوا آ تو گیا ہوں میں مگر گم ہو گیا نور نظر ہے آواز تو دے اکبر ہائے آواز تو دے اکبر تو نوجواں ہے اکبر اور ہے ضعیف بابا تو نوجواں ہے اکبر کیسے اٹھاؤں میت مجھ کو تو بتا دے اتنا جانا ہے اب خیام تک کیسے کروں میں یہ سفر خم ہو گئی میری کمر ہے آواز تو دے اکبر ہائے آواز تو دے اکبر آئی صدا جدھر سے میں اس طرف بڑھوں گا آئی صدا جدھر سے آواز سنتے سنتے تجھ رن میں ڈھونڈ ہی لوں گا تو ہے جدھر پیارے میرے دھیرے سے یہ کہتے ہوئے بابا ادھر ہے آواز تو دے اکبر آئے آواز تو دے اکبر صغرا کے نام ور کو خط کا جواب کیا دوں صغرا کے نام ور کو وہ منتظر ہے اس کو برچھی کا حال سنا دوں راستے سے نظریں ہٹا مارا گیا بھائی تیرا کیا بھیج دوں اس کو خبر ہے آواز تو دے اکبر ہے آواز تو دے اکبر تیری صدا کو سن کر وہ پھر سے جی اٹھے گی تیری صدا کو سن کر ہم شیر تیری ورنہ شاید نہیں جی پائے گی سینے کی برچھی تھام کے صغرا کو اس کے نام سے ایک بار ہمت جوڑ کر ہے آواز تو دے اکبر ہائے آواز تو دے اکبر
برچی سے بس کلیجا تیرا نہیں چھدا ہے، برچی سے بس کلیجا مقتل میں فاطمہ نے دل اپنا تھام لیا ہے، بھائی حسن نانا نبی بابا علی دادی تیری موجود ہیں سب ہی ادھر، ہے آواز تو دے اکبر، ہے آواز تو دے اکبر، کیسے بیاں کروں میں وہ دردناک منظر، کیسے بیاں کروں میں، سجدے میں تھی خدائی روتا تھا سارا لشکر، جب فاطمہ کے لال نے ہاتھوں پہ لے کر خاک سے رکھ کر کہا زانوں پہ سر، آواز تو دے اکبر، ہائے آواز تو دے اکبر، لاشے کے دونوں جانب بیٹھی ہیں مائیں دونوں، لاشے کے دونوں جانب سینے پہ بوسے دے کر لیتی ہیں بلائیں دونوں، زینب ادھر لیلا ادھر چومے تیرا زخمی جگر، ان سے تو کوئی بات کر، آواز تو دے اکبر، ہائے آواز تو دے اکبر، اکبر جناب اکبر خاموش ہو گئے تھے، اکبر جناب اکبر شبیر سر جھکائے لاشے کے پاس کھڑے تھے، زینب کبھی لیلا کبھی بہنیں کبھی نامور، کہتا رہا یہ سارا گھر، آواز تو دے اکبر، ہائے آواز تو دے اکبر، ہائے آواز تو دے اکبر، ہائے آواز تو دے اکبر، یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین، پور زهرای بتولی اشبه الناس بر رسولی، قبلگاه همه گشت کویت، دست شیعه بود رو به سویت، یا علی یا علی یا علی جان، یا علی یا علی یا علی جان، ای گل باغ ولایت کن نگاهی بر گدایت، ای که هستی تو پشت و پناهم، جان زهرا کن امشب نگاهم، یا علی یا علی یا علی جان، یا علی یا علی یا علی جان، قبلگاه عالمینی نوگل باغ حسین، نور چشمان اهل ولایی اولین کشته کربلایی، یا علی یا علی یا علی جان، یا علی یا علی یا علی جان، گفته از دل ای پدر جان بر علی ده حزن میدان، بس تو تنهایی و غم نصیبی، همچو حیدر پدر جان غریبی، یا علی یا علی یا علی جان، یا علی یا علی یا علی جان، یا علی ای نور عینم از غمت دم شور و شینم، ای که هستی گل باغ طاها، خون مکن یا علی قلب ما رو، یا علی یا علی یا علی جان، یا علی یا علی یا علی جان، آمدم اکبر کنارت، عمه گشته بیقرارت. ای امید حرم ای گل من، سوزد از داغ تو حاصل من. یا علی یا علی یا علی جان،
یا علی یا علی یا علی جان.
ای گل در خون تپیده، این پدر را قد خمیده. ای علی اکبر نوجوانم، از غم داغ تو نیمه جانم. یا علی یا علی یا علی جان، یا علی یا علی یا علی جان. یا علی یا علی یا علی جان، یا علی یا علی یا علی جان. یا علی.
Muhammad wa ali Muhammad sallallahu Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Brothers and sisters, before we start the adhan for Maghrib, I just want to remind you that tonight is Thursday night, and after Salatul Maghribain we will have the recitation of Dua al-Kumail followed by Ziyarat Warat inshallah. Now we will turn our attention to the adhan for Maghrib.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم. أشهد أن مولانا عليا ولي الله. أشهد أن مولانا أمير المؤمنين عليا حجة الله. حي على الصلاة، حي على الصلاة، حي على الفلاح، حي على الفلاح، حي على حي على خير العمل. الله أكبر، الله أكبر. لا
إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم الرحمن الرحيم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم الرحمن الرحيم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم الرحمن الرحيم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إني أسألك موجبات رحمتك وعزائم مغفرتك والنجاة من النار ومن كل بلية والفوز بالجنة والرضوان في دار السلام وجوار نبيك محمد عليه وآله السلام. اللهم ما بنا من نعمة فمنك لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم الرحمن الرحيم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم الرحمن الرحيم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم الرحمن الرحيم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إنه ليس لي علم بموضع رزقي وإنما أطلبه بخطرات تخطر على قلبي فأجول في طلبه البلدان فأنا فيما أنا طالب كالحيران لا أدري أفي سهل هو أم في جبل أم في أرض أم في سماء أم في بر أم في بحر وعلى يدي من ومن قبل من وقد علمت أن علمه عندك وأسبابه بيدك وأنت الذي تقسمه بلطفك وتسببه برحمتك. اللهم فصل على محمد وآله واجعل يا ربي رزقك لي واسعا ومطلبه سهلا ومأخذه قريبا ولا تعنني بطلب ما لم تقدر لي فيه رزقا فإنك غني عن عذابي وأنا فقير إلى رحمتك. فصل على محمد وآله وجد على عبدك بفضلك إنك ذو فضل عظيم. وصلى اللهم على سيدنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين.
Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. As we continue our program here on this 8th day of Muharram, the eve of 9th of Muharram, today being Thursday, we will now recite Dua Kumel.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد اللهم إني أسألك برحمتك التي وسعت كل شيء وبقوتك التي قهرت بها كل شيء وخضع لها كل شيء وذل لها كل شيء وبجبروتك التي غلبت بها كل شيء وبعزتك التي لا يقوم لها شيء وبعظمتك التي ملأت كل شيء وبسلطانك الذي على كل شيء وبوجهك الباقي بعد فناء كل شيء وبأسمائك التي ملأت أركان كل شيء وبعلمك الذي أحاط بكل شيء وبنور وجهك الذي أضاء له كل شيء يا نور يا قدوس يا أول الأولين ويا آخر الآخرين اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تهتك العصام اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل النقام اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تغير النعم اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تحبس الدعاء اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل البلاء اللهم اغفر لي كل ذنب أذنبته وكل خطيئة أخطأتها اللهم إني أتقرب إليك بذكرك وأستشفع بك إلى نفسك وأسألك بجودك أن تدنيني من قربك وأن توزعني شكرك وأن تلهمني ذكرك اللهم إني أسألك سؤال خاضع متذلل خاشع أن تسامحني وترحمني وتجعلني بقسمك راضيا قانعا وفي جميع الأحوال متواضعا اللهم وأسألك سؤال من اشتدت فاقته وأنزل بك عند الشدائد حاجته وعظم فيما عندك رغبته اللهم عظم سلطانك وعلى مكانك وخفي مكرك وظهر أمرك وغلب قهرك وجرت قدرتك ولا يمكن الفرار من حكومتك. اللهم لا أجد لذنوبي غافرا ولا لقبائحي ساترا ولا لشيء من عملي القبيح بالحسن مبدلا غيرك. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك وبحمدك ظلمت نفسي وتجرأت بجهلي وسكنت إلى قديم ذكرك لي ومنك علي. اللهم مولاي كم من قبيح سترته وكم من فادح من البلاء أقلته وكم من عثار وقيته وكم من مكروه دفعته وكم من ثناء جميل لست أهلا له نشرته. اللهم عظم بلائي وأفرط بي سوء حالي وقصرت بي أعمالي وقعدت بي أغلالي وحبسني عن نفعي بعد آمالي وخدعتني الدنيا بغرورها ونفسي بخيانتها ومطالي. يا سيدي فأسألك بعزتك ألا يحجب عنك دعائي سوء عملي وفعالي ولا تفضحني بخفي ما اطلعت عليه من سري ولا تعاجلني بالعقوبة على ما عملته في خلواتي من سوء فعلي وإساءتي ودوام تفريطي وجهالتي وكثرة شهواتي وغفلتي. وكن اللهم بعزتك لي في كل الأحوال رؤوفا وعلي في جميع الأمور عطوفا. إلهي وربي من لي غيرك أسأله كشف ضري والنظر في أمري. إلهي ومولاي أجريت علي حكما اتبعت فيه هوى نفسي ولم أحترس فيه من تزيين عدوي فغرني بما أهوى وأسعده على ذلك القضاء فتجاوزت بما جرى علي من ذلك بعض حدودك وخالفت بعض أوامرك فلك الحمد علي في جميع ذلك. ولا حجة لي فيما جرى علي فيه قضاؤك وألزمني حكمك وبلاؤك. وقد أتيتك يا إلهي بعد تقصيري وإسرافي على نفسي معتذرا نادما منكسرا مستقيلا مستغفرا منيبا مقرا مذعنا معترفا لا أجد مفرا مما كان مني ولا مفزعا أتوجه إليه في أمري غير قبولك عذري وإدخالك إياي في سعة من رحمتك. اللهم فاقبل عذري وارحم شدة ضري وفكني من شدي وثاقي. يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني ورقة جلدي ودقة عظمي. يا من بدأ خلقي وذكري وتربيتي وبري وتغذيتي، هبني لابتداء كرمك وسالف برك بي. يا إلهي وسيدي وربي، أتراك معذبي بنارك بعد توحيدك وبعد من طوى عليه قلبي من معرفتك ولهج به لساني من ذكرك واعتقده ضميري من حبك، وبعد صدق اعترافي ودعائي خاضعا لربوبيتك. هيهات أنت أكرم من أن تضيع من ربيت أو تبعد من أدنيت أو تشرد من آويت أو تسلم إلى البلاء من كفيته ورحمت. وليت شعري يا سيدي وإلهي ومولاي، أتسلط النار على وجوه خرت لعظمتك ساجدا وعلى ألسن نطقت بتوحيدك صادقا وبشكرك مادحا، وعلى قلوب اعترفت بإلهيتك محققا، وعلى ضمائر حوت من العلم بك حتى صارت خاشعا، وعلى جوارح سعت إلى أوطان تعبدك طائعا، وأشارت باستغفارك مذعنا. ما هكذا الظن بك ولا أخبرنا بفضلك عنك يا كريم يا رب، وأنت تعلم ضعفي عن قليل من بلاء الدنيا وعقوباتها وما يجري فيها من المكاره على أهلها، على أن ذلك بلاء ومكروه قليل مكثوه يسير بقاؤه قصير مدته، فكيف احتمالي لبلاء الآخرة وجليل وقوع المكاره فيها وهو بلاء تطول مدته ويدوم مقامه ولا يخفف عن أهله، لأنه لا يكون إلا عن غضبك وانتقامك وسخطك. وهذا ما لا تقوم له السماوات والأرض يا سيدي، فكيف لي وأنا عبدك الضعيف الذليل الحقير المسكين المستكين. يا إلهي وربي وسيدي ومولاي، لأي الأمور إليك أشكو ولما منها أضج وأبكي؟ لأليم العذاب وشدته أم لطول البلاء ومدته؟ فلئن صيرتني للعقوبات مع أعدائك وجمعت بيني وبين أهل بلائك وفرقت بيني وبين أحبائك وأوليائك، فهبني يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي وربي صبرت على عذابك فكيف أصبر على فراقك وهبني صبرت على حر نارك فكيف أصبر عن النظر إلى كرامتك أم كيف أسكن في النار ورجائي عفوك فبعزتك يا سيدي ومولاي أقسم صادقا لئن تركتني ناطقا لأضجن إليك بين أهلها ضجيج الآملين ولأصرخن إليك صراخ المستصرخين ولأبكين عليك بكاء الفاقدين ولأنادينك أين كنت يا ولي المؤمنين يا غاية آمال العارفين يا غياث المستغيثين يا حبيب قلوب الصادقين ويا إله العالمين أفتراك سبحانك يا إلهي وبحمدك تسمع فيها صوت عبد مسلم سجن فيها بمخالفته وذاق طعم عذابها بمعصيته وحبس بين أطباقها بجرمه وجريرته وهو يضج إليك ضجيج مؤمل لرحمتك ويناديك بلسان أهل توحيدك ويتوسل إليك بربوبيتك يا مولاي فكيف يبقى في العذاب وهو يرجو ما سلف من حلمك أم كيف تؤلمه النار وهو يأمل فضلك ورحمتك أم كيف يحرقه لهيبها وأنت تسمع صوته وترى مكانه أم كيف يشتمل عليه زفيرها وأنت تعلم ضعفه أم كيف يتقلقل بين أطباقها وأنت تعلم صدقا أم كيف تزجره زبانيتها وهو يناديك يا رباه أم كيف يرجو فضلك في عتقه منها فتتركه فيها هيهات ما ذلك الظن بك ولا المعروف من فضلك ولا مشبه لما عاملت به الموحدين من برك وإحسانك فباليقين أقطع لولا ما حكمت به من تعذيب جاحديك وقضيت به من إخلاد معانديك لجعلت النار كلها بردا وسلاما وما كان لأحد فيها مقرا ولا مقاما لكنك تقدست أسماؤك أقسمت أن تملأها من الكافرين من الجنة والناس أجمعين وأن تخلد فيها المعاندين وأن تجلى ثناؤك قلت مبتدئا وتطولت بالإنعام متكرما أفمن كان مؤمنا كمن كان فاسقا لا يستوون إلهي وسيدي فأسألك بالقدرة التي قدرتها وبالقضية التي حتمتها وحكمتها وغلبت من عليه أجريتها أن تهب لي في هذه الليلة وفي هذه الساعة كل جرم أجرمته وكل ذنب أذنبته وكل قبيح أسررته وكل جهل عملته كتمته أو أعلنته أخفيته أو أظهرته وكل سيئة أمرت بإثباتها الكرام الكاتبين الذين وكلتهم بحفظ ما يكون مني وجعلتهم شهودا علي مع جوارحي وكنت أنت الرقيب علي من ورائهم والشاهد لما خفي عنهم وبرحمتك أخفيته وبفضلك سترته وأن توفر حظي من كل خير أنزلته أو إحسان فضلته أو بر تنشره أو رزق تبسطه أو ذنب تغفره أو خطأ تستره يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي ومالك رقي يا من بيده ناصيتي يا عليما بضري ومسكنتي يا خبيرا بفقري وفاقتي يا ربي يا ربي يا رب أسألك بحقك وقدسك وأعظم صفاتك وأسمائك أن تجعل أوقاتي من الليل والنهار بذكرك معمورا وبخدمتك موصولا وأعمالي عندك مقبولا حتى تكون أعمالي وأورادي كلها وردا واحدا وحالي في خدمتك سرمدا يا سيدي يا من عليه معولي يا من إليه شكوت أحوالي يا ربي يا ربي يا رب قو على خدمتك جوارحي واشدد على العزيمة جوانحي وهب لي الجد في خشيتك والدوام في الاتصال بخدمتك حتى أصرح إليك في ميادين السابقين وأسرع إليك في المبادرين وأشتاق إلى قربك في المشتاقين وأدنو منك دنو المخلصين وأخافك مخافة الموقنين وأجتمع في جوارك مع المؤمنين اللهم ومن أرادني بسوء فأرد ومن كادني فكد واجعلني من أحسن عبيدك نصيبا عندك وأقربهم منزلة منك وأخصهم زلفة لديك فإنه لا ينال ذلك إلا بفضلك وجد لي بجودك واعطف علي بمجدك واحفظني برحمتك واجعل لساني بذكرك لهجا وقلبي بحبك متيما ومن علي بحسن إجابتك وأقلني عثرتي واغفر زلتي فإنك قضيت على عبادك بعبادتك وأمرتهم بدعائك وضمنت لهم الإجابة، فإليك يا ربي نصبت وجهي، وإليك يا ربي مددت يدي، فبعزتك استجب لي دعائي وبلغني مناي، ولا تقطع من فضلك رجائي، واكفني شر الجن والإنس من أعدائي. يا سريع الرضا اغفر لمن لا يملك إلا الدعاء، فإنك فعال لما تشاء. يا من اسمه دواء وذكره شفاء وطاعته غنى، ارحم من رأس ماله الرجاء وسلاحه البكاء. يا سابغ النعم يا دافع النقام، يا نور المستوحشين في الظلام، يا عالما لا يعلم، صل على محمد وآل محمد وافعل بما أنت أهله. وصلى الله على رسوله والأئمة الميامين من آله وسلم تسليما كثيرا كثيرا.
In the name of Allah, the most compassionate, the most merciful, all praise belongs to you, our Lord, Lord of the worlds. We ask you to increase your peace and blessings upon our Prophet and upon his family and friends millions of times. O Lord, despite this great storm, we thank you for the much needed slowdown. We thank you for the chance to take stock of our lives and finally attend to matters that we had delayed for so long. And we thank you for the newfound appreciation we have for your infinite blessings. O Lord, though we are grateful, we feel like powerless ships drifting into uncharted waters. Borders are closed and planes are grounded. Shops are shuttered and town centers are deserted. Our livelihoods have diminished and we can no longer spend or consume as we like. We can't even leave our homes to visit loved ones, some of whom we may never see again. Your houses are closed and there is no pilgrimage. O Lord, none of us know where all of this is heading, and so we turn to you, admitting our helplessness and fear. We beg you to help us weather this storm in the best of ways, and to please grant us all the good that it contains, and all the good that hides behind it, and to make the journey as smooth as possible. Multiply our positivity and resilience, help us be proactive and productive, and inspire us with creative solutions to the extraordinary challenges we face. Fill us with patience and self-control, gratitude and generosity, and deep compassion towards one another. Fill our homes and neighborhoods with peace, happiness, and grace, and make this the means of unity that humanity so desperately needs. Help us keep our bodies, souls, and minds as fit and healthy as possible. Protect us from infection and from any other illness or accident that would need medical help. Protect us from debt, unemployment, and bankruptcy. And protect us from the many other harms that this storm contains, and the harms which hide behind it. And whatever challenges you may place ahead of us, help us to overcome them and give us trust in your wisdom. O Lord, though we don't know where our ships will land, we ask you to help us exit from this storm better, stronger, and closer to you than when it began, and that you navigate us to a new normal that is far better than the one we left behind, and that you never allow us to forget the lessons we learned along the way. O Lord, grant all of this not just to us, but to our loved ones, our neighbors, our friends, our brothers and sisters throughout the world, and all humanity. O Lord, grant a fast recovery to those who are ill and a safe return to loved ones kept apart. Take special care of the old and vulnerable and those who are mentally unwell. Grant a special solace to those who are living alone, those who are dying alone, and those whose loved ones pass away. Grant a special patience to young children and the adults who are raising them. and grant a special mercy to those who are now locked up with mean, selfish, or abusive people. Grant a special grace to the frontline workers and volunteers upon whom so many depend, especially those who risk their own health to care for ours. And grant a special aid to the needy, to those with few resources, to those struggling to make ends meet, to those working under great pressure, and to those who are striving to make the world a better place. And we especially ask you to please compel our leaders to do what's best for us all. O Lord, you've promised to answer our calls, and you never break your promises, and you are the most generous of those who show generosity. So please answer our call in the most generous of ways, and keep us consistent in making it until we reach safety. And in closing, we ask you to increase your peace and blessings upon our Prophet and upon his family and friends millions of times, and all praise belongs to you. Ameen.
أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء 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 أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء.
السلام عليك يا وارث آدم صفوة الله. السلام عليك يا وارث نوح نبي الله. السلام عليك يا وارث إبراهيم خليل الله. السلام عليك يا وارث موسى كليم الله. السلام عليك يا وارث عيسى روح الله. السلام عليك يا وارث محمد حبيب الله. السلام عليك يا وارث علي أمير المؤمنين ولي الله. السلام عليك يا ابن محمد المصطفى. السلام عليك يا ابن علي المرتضى. السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة الزهراء. السلام عليك يا ابن خديجة الكبرى. السلام عليك يا ثار الله وابن ثاره والوتر الموتور. أشهد أنك قد أقمت الصلاة وآتيت الزكاة وأمرت بالمعروف ونهيت عن المنكر وأطعت الله ورسوله حتى أتاك اليقين. فلعن الله أمة قتلت ولعن الله أمة ظلمت ولعن الله أمة سمعت بذلك فرضيت به. يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، أشهد أنك كنت نورا في الأصلاب الشامخة والأرحام المطهرة، لم تنجسك الجاهلية بأنجاسها ولم تلبسك من مدلهمات ثيابها. وأشهد أنك من دعائم الدين وأركان المؤمنين. وأشهد أنك الإمام البر التقي الرضي الزكي الهادي المهدي. وأشهد أن الأئمة من ولدك كلمة التقوى وأعلام الهدى والعروة الوثقى والحجة على أهل الدنيا. وأشهد الله وملائكته وأنبياءه ورسله أني بكم مؤمن وبإيابكم موقن. بشرائع ديني وخواتيم عملي، وقلبي لقلبكم سلم، وأمري لأمركم متبع. صلوات الله عليكم وعلى أرواحكم وعلى أجسادكم وعلى أجسامكم وعلى شاهدكم وعلى غائبكم وعلى ظاهركم وعلى باطنكم. زيارة علي بن الحسين عليه السلام. السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله، السلام عليك يا ابن نبي الله، السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا ابن الحسين الشهيد، السلام عليك أيها الشهيد وابن الشهيد، السلام عليك أيها المظلوم وابن المظلوم. لعن الله أمة قتلت، ولعن الله أمة ظلمت، ولعن الله أمة سمعت بذلك فرضيت به. زيارة الشهداء سلام الله عليهم. السلام عليكم يا أولياء الله وأحباءه، السلام عليكم يا أصفياء الله وأوداءه، السلام عليكم يا أنصار دين الله، السلام عليكم يا أنصار رسول الله، السلام عليكم يا أنصار أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليكم يا أنصار فاطمة سيدة نساء العالمين، السلام عليكم يا أنصار أبي محمد الحسن بن علي الولي الزكي الناصح، السلام عليكم يا أنصار أبي عبد الله، بأبي أنتم وأمي طبتم وطابت الأرض التي فيها دفنتم، وفزتم فوزا عظيما، فيا ليتني كنت معكم فأفوز معكم. زيارة العباس سلام الله عليه. السلام عليك يا أبا الفضل العباس ابن أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا ابن سيد الوصيين، السلام عليك يا ابن أول القوم إسلاما وأقدمهم إيمانا وأقومهم بدين الله وأحوطهم على الإسلام. أشهد لقد نصحت لله ولرسوله ولأخيك، فنعم الأخ المواسي، فلعن الله أمة قتلت، ولعن الله أمة ظلمت، ولعن الله أمة استحلت منك المحارم وانتهكت حرمة الإسلام. فنعم الصابر المجاهد المحامي الناصر والأخ الدافع عن أخيه، المجيب إلى طاعة ربه، الراغب فيما زهد فيه غيره من الثواب الجزيل والثناء الجميل. وألحقك الله بدرجة آبائك في جنات النعيم. اللهم إني تعرضت لزيارة أوليائك رغبة في ثوابك ورجاء لمغفرتك وجزيل إحسانك، فأسألك أن تصلي على محمد وآله الطاهرين، وأن تجعل رزقي بهم دارا وعيشي بهم قارا وزيارتي بهم مقبولة وحياتي بهم طيبة، وأدرجني إدراج المكرمين، واجعلني ممن ينقلب من زيارة مشاهد أحبائك مفلحا منجحا قد استوجب غفران الذنوب وستر العيوب وكشف الكروب إنك أهل التقوى وأهل المغفرة.
السلام عليكم يا شهداء كربلاء ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليكم. السلام عليك يا علي بن الحسين زين العابدين. السلام عليك يا محمد بن علي الباقر. السلام عليك يا جعفر بن محمد الصادق. السلام عليك يا موسى بن جعفر الكاظم. السلام عليك يا علي بن موسى الرضا الراضي بالقدر والقضاء. السلام عليك يا محمد بن علي الجواد. السلام عليك يا علي بن محمد الهادي. السلام عليك يا حسن بن علي العسكري. السلام عليك يا حجة الله يا ابن الحسن يا صاحب العصر والزمان. السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن يا عين الحياة يا سفينة النجاة. السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان. Let's all recite together. عجل على ظهورك عجل على ظهورك يا ابن الحسن يا ابن الحسن عجل على ظهورك عجل على ظهورك عجل على ظهورك. السلام عليكم يا أهل بيت النبوة جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. صلوات على محمد وعلى محمد.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا. وصلى اللهم على سيدنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين.
Brothers and sisters, this brings us to the end of our program tonight. Thank you all for joining. We look forward to seeing you again tomorrow at 7 p.m. For the regular Muharram program. But I also would like to remind you that tomorrow we will be starting earlier in a Zoom session at 6 p.m. Which we will also try to live cast. So please go to the website, look at the event details. And the Zoom session will be a question and answer session with our guest speaker as he approaches the completion of his presentations planned for the first 12 days of Muharram. So we'll see you tomorrow at 6 p.m. if not at 7 p.m. And one other clarification from what I had said earlier, in case I was not clear, the day of Ashura is on Saturday, and our programming for Saturday will start sharp at 11 in the morning. Again, details are on the website. Thank you all for joining tonight, and I say, Fi amanillah, Khuda Hafiz.